A man and his family have been forced to go into hiding this week in South Africa after one of our biggest news media organizations falsely accused him of being the person behind an infamous anonymous Twitter account. And this story is about unbelievably irresponsible, unacceptable behavior from a massive news media organization. So let's talk about Mohammed Yaqub Varda, his family, the Twitter account Gulam MV, independent media, and also Lindiwe Sisulu. This is The Issue with Dan Corder. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. And just before we get into this massive story that's dominated the South African news cycle this week, I want to let you know that we, as all the things that we do, all the shows that we do, including the TV show, now have a daily morning news podcast that is basically a radio show on demand. It's called Dan Corder in the Morning. You can go and search that on any of your favorite podcast streamers. It's on Spotify and Apple and literally everywhere else. And it's a 20 to 30 minute news morning podcast where we tell you the news worth knowing in the radio style that I've done for so many years. We've been doing it for a week and it is a real treat. So to fully understand what happened, I need to give you a quick contextualizer on independent media, Lindiwe Sisulu, and the Twitter account Gulam MV. Let's start with independent media. Independent media is one of the most influential and historically prestigious news media companies in South Africa. It's been around for decades. Has a massive, it's called a stable of titles. Independent media's stable includes massive and famous respected titles like the Cape Times, the Cape Argus, the Pretoria News, the Star. Until about 10 years ago, when independent media was bought by Dr. Iqbal Survey, a South African, I think former medical doctor and businessman who used a bunch of funding that he generated himself, a lot of it public investment corporation funding, which means government funding, to buy independent media. And he immediately fired or pushed out a raft of excellent journalists, editors, members of the newsroom and backroom staff right across independent media, from the editor of the Cape Times through to the newsrooms of the Star and Pretoria News and a bunch of others. And then almost overnight, independent media changed. They became, one, a puff piece propaganda rag for Dr. Iqbal Survey. You would see these extraordinary, like praise poetry pieces about their own owner on the front page of every single one of their titles. Whenever anything happened with him, and a lot of things have happened with him because he has been involved in a bunch of dodgy dealings, run-ins with the law, there are credible theories and pieces of evidence about mishandling of public funds and all of that involving Iqbal Survey. The second thing that independent media immediately became was the opening batsman batting relentlessly for Jacob Zuma and anybody allied to Jacob Zuma, what then later became known as the Radical Economic Transformation faction. And this is because Iqbal Survey has extremely close ties with a bunch of ANC officials and figures and businessmen and politicians affiliated with the ANC and affiliated particularly with Jacob Zuma's ANC. And many people speculate that a lot of the reason why he got public investment corporation money was to buy independent media with those interests at heart. So you will see in independent media constant apologism for Jacob Zuma and his allied cronies. In independent media, you will see constant vicious attacks on anybody who criticizes Zuma's people because they are Iqbal Survey's people. And the third thing that you'll get from independent media is some of the most wild fake news this country has ever seen. The big one is independent media gave us Tembisa 10, the decuplets. They are the reason why the whole of South Africa learned the word for 10 babies born at once, even though no human being has ever done that unless you talk to independent media, who promise, pinky swear, and insist that the decuplets were real, even though we never saw any of them. There's no trustworthy evidence that they ever existed, and independent media still insists that. They have spun these long, fabulous yarns without any evidence to suggest that maybe the decuplets were kidnapped or trafficked and there were foreigners involved, or were there not foreigners involved, and was there a fake doctor or not a fake doctor, and this and that. That's independent media, and they still insist that the decuplets are real. That's the kind of news media organization they are trying to be, Lindiwe Sisulu is honestly South Africa's biggest political nepo baby. She was born of the struggle icons Albertina and Walter Sisulu, who were phenomenal struggle icons and ANC leaders, and she's been riding off of their coattails ever since. She's bounced through a bunch of different ministries over the last 15, 20 years, destroyed them all. Like, they've all fallen apart, but still has this extraordinarily arrogant chip on her shoulder that she really matters and is a really big deal. And the last thing you need to know for this story is about Gulam MV. It's a Twitter account that's been around for 5 or 6 years, an anonymous Twitter account that has become very influential in South African media, politics, and society. It's got over 120,000 followers. And essentially, this account has become really big because it is relentlessly called out and attacked the corruption and incompetence of ANC leaders and self-styled revolutionaries like Malema and Shivambu and Zuma. I think their Twitter account's bio at the moment literally says blocked by Zuma, Malema, and Shivambu. It's a badge of honor. And a lot of people tried to attack Gulam MV, the Twitter account, for running this narrative, this position, and constantly calling out all these parties. A lot of people accuse it of being the DA or paid for by the DA or right-wing or racist, but it's completely anonymous. No one knows who runs it. So that's what you need to know for what has happened this week. Gulam MV is the enemy of independent media Iqbal Survey and Lindiwe Sisulu. It's come for all of them and called out all of their nonsense for a long time over the years. And so on Monday, independent media summoned anybody who would pitch up to a press conference called #unmasking. Sounds like a COVID thing. And at this event, they said they were going to unmask, they were going to reveal the identity of the personal people behind the Gulam MV Twitter account. And Dr. Iqbal Survey arrived with Lindiwe Sisulu, because Lindiwe Sisulu believes that she has skin in this game because she blames the Gulam MV Twitter account for essentially destroying her bid to become president of the ANC in 2017. Apparently it was Gulam MV and not the fact that she's historically unpopular, had no constituency, and never had any real chance of becoming president of the African National Congress. No, it was Gulam MV's fault. And so independent media calls this press conference, and with all these people in the audience, they get up and they unmask the person behind Gulam MV, and they say it's a man called Mohammed Yaqub Varda. They didn't just give the name, they gave a bunch about his life so that he was easily findable. They said that he was a UKZN lecturer at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. He was a stand-up comedian and radio presenter. So they really made sure that we could all go find him and do awful things to him. That was their intention. It was genuinely a don't fuck with us kind of moment, right? And Mohammed Yaqub Varda, he's publicly accessible for all the reasons that independent media said. He's a UKZN lecturer, stand-up comedy. He sometimes presents on the weekend at the big, largely Indian radio station Lotus FM around Durban and KZN. So obviously what happened next is Yaqub Varda got horrific messages. He was accused of being racist because people perceive Gulam MV, the Twitter account, of being racist. He was told to go back to India, which is so fucking racist. And he received terrible death threats. So he and his family had to go into hiding because of what this media organization had done. He hasn't been on Twitter since like 2017, years and years. And he and his attorneys that he got made a statement and said he's not behind the Gulam MV Twitter account, and they demanded a full apology and retraction from independent media, and almost certainly that they were going to sue because reputational damage, threats to life, significantly traumatic harm of what independent media did to him and his family. He had to go into hiding from death threats. His life was nearly ruined by what independent media did. And he said, that wasn't me. You got it wrong, independent media. And almost immediately it became clear that independent media knew that they got it wrong. They put the video of the live stream on YouTube of the event private, and they deleted the tweet accusing Varda of doing these things. They immediately tried to pull back and say, almost like, no, don't go look at it, you can't see it, don't do it, like maybe we didn't do it. Like they tried to remove the evidence, but of course the internet is forever and remembers everything. And so we have the tweets and we have the video. And so this rolled on for a few days, and then yesterday, independent media, but not Dr. Iqbal Survey or Lindiwe Sisulu, the two faces of what independent media did to this man and his family, neither of them came on the video clarifier that independent media posted yesterday, because they posted this video two people who work at independent media. They never apologized, but they basically over 5 painful minutes said that they had spoke on the wrong Mohammed Varda. They said we were investigating 2 Mohammed Vardas and we named the wrong one. In fact, it's worse than that. They said that they knew about both Mohammed Vardas and they had worked out, again, not showing us any evidence, they'd worked out that it was one Mohammed Varda, not the UKZN lecturer, but then a technical error of some kind meant that in the press conference and online, they named the wrong Mohammed Varda. They uploaded the wrong profile, which is either so incompetent or just flatly untrue. And I'm leaning towards the second one, because if you are going to dox someone, if you're going to expose someone, if you have been working, spending resources, time, and energy trying to expose this person, if your boss and all the people in this company believe that this person is the evil enemy and must be exposed and doxed and have their life ruined, you're going to make sure when you figure out who you think it is that you got the right person. And then you're going to check the speech and check the tweets and check the video. You're not just going to post it. And they did. And if they hadn't done that, immediately after the press conference, they would have jumped in, interjected, tried to stop it, released a statement. Not on Thursday, not 72 hours later. So that's what this news organization did this week. And it is really, really contemptible. And I feel terrible we should all feel terrible for what has happened to Mohammed Yaqub Varda and his family, the trauma, the pain, the real feeling of lack of safety and lack of dignity that they have all gone through and will probably go through for a while. And it's just such reprehensible action from an organization and a group of people who have an enormous reach, an enormous platform with which they can destroy people's lives. And I really hope that there are serious consequences for them. It looks like they're going to be sued like literally down to the ground, which I'm thrilled about, because we can't live in a world or a country where people this powerful can do something that awful and then just walk away and do it again later, just get away with it. Unlike the Tembisa 10, there are real victims in this situation, in this fuck up from this news organization. But the one thing that does warm my heart is how South Africans immediately leapt to the misidentified Mohammed Yaqub Varda's defense. So many lawyers offering to pro bono help, so many people trying to figure out what really happened to try and restore his reputation and to convince independent media to retract and to shut the fuck up. But yeah, that's the biggest story from this week. And I hope it makes you and all of us really think about how news media organizations with enormous platforms must behave and what they must not be allowed to do. Because what happened this week could have ended so badly. It could have ended in the death of a man who did nothing. Even if this Mohammed Yaqub Varda had been the person running this Twitter account. They needed to not do this in such a way that would cause that person to maybe lose their life. We need to do better.